Let's go ahead and bring in Steiner Sports CEO, Brandon Steiner.
One of the country's top memorabilia mogul.
I have an unbelievable guest, Brandon Steiner.
Brandon's second to none.
If you're a baseball fan and a business fan, and you're going to see the correlation between business and baseball. We're really one of the best pitching coaches, and there's really no more difficult a coaching job in sports than the pitching coach. We have Rick Peterson, and he just comes out with this book, and it's been out for a little while, but this is a definite book if you're into business, baseball, and just some of the underlying stuff that goes on between being focused baseball player, which the same parallels to as it is to business. Crunch Time. You can pick this up on Amazon. Rick Peterson joins us, and you're a Met fan. Take it easy. I know we don't give you equal rights, so today we're showing a little Bobby Valentine yesterday. You gotta like that, and Rick Peterson today. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Hey, how you doing?
Good to see you.
My pleasure.
Well, first question right out of the gate is, why this book, and who's this book for?
It's actually for everybody, which is ironically enough. It's for anybody that deals with pressure and anybody that's ever felt like this in the face of fight, flight, or freeze, in that moment of fear, worry, and doubt. If you've experienced that, this book is for you, without question. And it's kind of interesting because I grew up in a baseball family, and Dad played in the big leagues. And I had a uniform on since I've been 2 years old, literally. And I pretty much never took it off until after I just started getting into keynote speaking. And it was so ironic because I was around Roberto Clemente and Bill Mazeroski and Danny Murtaugh. I mean, this was family, literally. And Uncle Danny, I called Danny was Uncle Danny. I was 12 and when I found out. Mom finally told me, said, "You know what? Danny's really not your uncle." I'm like, "Geez, come on," that's how close this whole this whole pirate family was. That's why the '79 we are family World Series champs. It came from that because they really were family.
And that's with the yellow caps with the stripes.
Right. That actually was part of designing it.
My Little League championship team. We were the Pirates, and I went into the throwback. I dressed my kids in those unis.
There you go.
Define pressure for me, though, because you mentioned pressure 3 times about what this book is about. I think people feel pressure when they're playing sports and in business, but why do they feel pressure, or define pressure? And
I think pressure comes from pretty much a lack of trust in yourself, and it really comes in that moment where you feel that fear, worry, and doubt. And everybody has that, and everybody goes through failures. And Gatorade did a phenomenal commercial with Michael Jordan and Eli and Peyton Manning and Serena Williams and Maddie Ryan, and he talked about, "I'm successful because I failed." And Michael starts off by saying, "Pressure's like when I got cut from the high school team." And it was ironically enough, as a young coach with the White Sox, Michael Jordan was playing baseball when I was a AA pitching coach, and I got to know Michael very well. But let me define, because I think it's really, really fascinating. Fear, worry, and doubt, which we all have that feeling at different times, and it's a lack of confidence, it's a lack of trust. But what literally is fear, worry, and doubt? It's a lack of preparation, it's a lack of knowledge, it's a lack of insight, and it's a lack of talent. So when you come into these pressure situations and you start to ask yourself, am I prepared? Do I have the knowledge to do this? Do I have the talent to do this? And do I have the insight? If the answer is yes, then fear, worry, and doubt's make believe. But we all deal with that. And when we have these setbacks, which we all have these setbacks, as we talk about in the book, a setback is what we call, it's a case of mistaken identity. We no longer look at ourselves as the successful people we truly are. We look at ourselves as failures. And we go to this place in our mind like, I'm so stupid. Like, what was I thinking? Like, I'm an idiot. And if our thoughts were literally broadcast over the loudspeakers, people would think we're crazy, without question. But we all go to that place. And I think what I've realized at an early age, growing up, and again, in a pirate family, I remember about 12 or 13 years old, I asked Dad, I said, "Dad, why do some of these guys make it to the big leagues, and some of these guys with better talent, they don't make it?" And basically it was the mental game. They don't understand how to deal with pressure effectively. And
confidence in one's ability, and also, secure about the strategy of either yourself or the team. Because we've seen pitchers that are confident in their ability, or players or business people, but they don't believe in their company.
Exactly.
So you got to believe not only in your ability, but you got to trust the team concept. You have to trust the strategy that your coach and manager has set forth, and be confident in your own ability. I got to ask you, hold on, I got to get on that.
All right.
And I don't want to get into too sidetracked, but why not?
Why not?
But Roberto Clemente, one of my favorite players. We lost him way too soon. You mentioned that you were around at that time. What made him so special? He was an unbelievable five-tool player. What was that like? What was he like?
Well, you know what's amazing? He was one of my favorite people growing up, and after Dad hurt his arm, Dad managed all through the minor leagues, and so I went to grade school all in the South, all in North Carolina, and so I saw the civil rights movement as a kid, and the Pirates had more blacks and African American players and more Latin American players than anybody in baseball. Manny Sanguillen.
Oh yeah,
right. They remember the one day they fielded it in all a non-white. There wasn't one white person on the field. It was the first time.
Who was driving that?
I think it was just driven by talent. It was It was like collecting the best talent, and everybody back in the day, Howie Hake, he was in the Hall of Fame, scouts. People were they were colorblind. We don't care. We don't care what you look like. We care how fast can you run, how far can you hit, what kind of arm do you have. And I think what was so amazing, not only was Clemente a Hall of Famer on the field, but he was a Hall of Famer off the field. And
how so?
Think about this. To be a Latin American black player in the 60s in a blue-collar city like Pittsburgh, that you talk about pressure off the field. It was amazing. And rather than literally make a fist, he opened his hands and said, what can I do for everybody? And he became a humanitarian. And to this day, the Roberto Clemente Award, as you know, is one of the most prestigious awards in baseball.
And he's like Babe Ruth when you go to Puerto Rico, or
no question.
He's like Babe Ruth. He has that kind of street credentials and beloved beyond beloved. What was it? So was there any particular moment you had with him that you could share, or any particular something?
Well, back in the day, they used to play pepper, if you remember.
Yeah.
And pepper was, you'd get about 50 feet away, and then you'd have a couple guys, throw the ball with some pace, and then the batter would learn how to get the head of the bat to the ball and be able to hit it in different places. But nobody really liked to field pepper. But being a young boy, because I was athletic and I could pitch and I can catch the ball, I used to play pepper for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and Bobby would come out and he'd go, hey, Ricky, come on, we play pepper. I'm going, yeah, come on, Bobby, come on, let's see what you got, man, let's see what you got.
You played pepper with Roberto Clemente?
And not only that, how cool is this?
Man, that's the shit.
Right.
You can't just be dropping that. I mean, you are...
But I didn't know.
You just didn't know better. You just were just doing.
He was
your
just
thing.
a guy. Well, he worked. He worked with my dad. I didn't know he was Roberto Clemente until I got older, and I went like, oh my God. I think back of how privileged I was being around all these people. But what I learned early on in my life was that the mental game is the difference to be successful, because everybody can learn a skill. Whether it's a plumber, or electrician, or a skill of accounting, or whatever, everybody can learn skills. But if you don't have the mental game and you can't deal with pressure, and you have the inability to reframe pressure when all the money's on the table, I mean, it was interesting, and I'm bouncing around a little bit, but I'm so fascinated by the mental game. What makes these guys so great? And I asked Michael Jordan when I was a young coach. I asked Michael Jordan one day.
Now that was when he was in the minor leagues,
right?
So you asked Michael Jordan one day what?
I asked him, I said, Michael, was there a moment in your life that you realized, holy geez, like I'm MJ. I'm frickin' MJ. He said, ironically enough, there was. He said, after my sophomore year in college, Coach Smith brought me in. He said, Michael, I want you to watch this videotape. So he took practice footage and game footage of his freshman year and sophomore year, and he scrambled them. And he said, I want you to tell me what year each clip is from. So he went through the exercise, freshman, sophomore, freshman. And he said, from a motivation standpoint, Coach Smith had always told me, Michael, you're the greatest physical talent of our time. We've never seen anybody with this kind of talent. So he went through the exercise, and Coach Smith said, so Michael, what's your takeaway? He said, you know what? My freshman year, I had a great year, and I prepared great. My sophomore year, I had a really, really good year, and I prepared really good. And the only one that really knew the difference was Coach Smith. And he said, and I realized at that moment, talent does not equate to performance. Preparation equals performance. And I realized that I'll never outperform my preparation. It's not going to happen. And I also realized there's an incredibly high price to be best. It doesn't come cheaply. Unfortunately, you got to pay full price. It doesn't go on sale. You don't get coupons. You can't go to Target. You can't go to Walmart. You got to pay full price, and you pay the full price in preparation every day.
There's no discount in earning greatness. But I'm upset with Michael because I feel like, first of all, he had balls. You got to have balls to leave being one of the best we've ever seen, maybe we'll ever see, and then go play baseball, something he had a passion and a drive to do. But then I felt like he quit. I felt like he gave up. Should he have hung in there? Could he have hung in there? Or it's just not for everyone, to play on that next level, which is where he needed to go.
I think he realized that of his incredible greatness, that baseball was not one of his great. He couldn't accept anything but great. And in his golf, he had the passion for golf as well, and he worked at it. But he got really frustrated with the way that he played. That's my instincts watching. But I think more than anything else, when he would talk about the Bulls and he would talk about that run, and then you could see, like, as he looked at it from that 30,000-foot view of what they were doing at this time, and he realized, you know what, I'm not a baseball player. I like baseball, but I'm MJ. I'm MJ, and it was time for him to go back. And it was really cool because it was an instructional league when he left, and he kind of got us all together. He said, I'm leaving tomorrow. I want to thank everybody. This has been really cool. He was more than generous. Everybody got
the bus. Sneakers,
everything. I mean, I didn't experience that because I was with him in spring training and instructional league, but he was just more than generous. He let everybody in to find out what Michael Jordan's about. And he said, listen, you guys will be on the field when I'm leaving tomorrow. So Nike sent their jet down to take me back to Chicago, but I'm going to do a flyby on the field. And so we were all out in the field, and here's MJ taking off, and then he circles the minor league complex before he went back to the Bulls. How cool
He had
is
a good
that?
sense of humor.
He had a great sense of humor.
He has a good sense of humor. He's somebody that unfortunately is more private than he is public.
Right.
And some people will miss some of that personality, his shenanigans,
Right.
and really even understand how that greatness comes about. It'd be great. I wish he was able to articulate and talk more about it. Back to the book for a second. Are you saying that crunch time, and when you're teaching pitching, it'd be the same thing as when you're teaching a mid-level manager or a salesperson, the same kind of pressure to put up a number?
Absolutely. Because there's a skill set in order to reframe pressure. Because here's what happens, and I'm not going to get heavy duty. I'm going to try to be oversimplified.
We get a little heavy duty here, no?
Well, not too technical.
By the way, if you have a question for Rick, this is a participation sport. And I know some of you are out there worrying about, or you're feeling some pressure right now, about how you're going to hit your number. We'll do some questions and answers in a few minutes. So, please drill in whatever you have. And Ben, our crack producer right here, is going to jump in on your questions. But explain to me how the similarities.
So here's literally what happens at the moment of pressure. It's in everyone's DNA. It's what happens to the physiology of the body. The base of your brain, called the amygdala, starts to react immediately to pressure, and you go into that fight, flight, or freeze. And now cortisol starts to get released in your system. Cortisol is that hormone that you get the dry mouth, you get the sweats, you've got the sweaty palms, the whole deal, and your heart's beating through your chest. And
I'm starting to get pressure from right now.
There you go.
I'm kidding. Yeah.
And the skill is to literally push the pause button. Push the pause button, and as you push the pause button, it literally creates space from the base of your brain to the prefrontal cortex. And now the prefrontal cortex gets activated, and now dopamine gets released through your system. Dopamine is the feel-good. Ironically enough, what all the electronic people have done, Apple, for example, with the smartphone, they've created it in such a way that we're addicted to it, because what happens is you start to interact with it, dopamine starts to go through your system. You're addicted to dopamine. Everybody's addicted to it. And so to have the skill set to push that pause button and now say, what's my opportunity? Because there's always a solution there. There's always an opportunity. And the people that really react to their pressure, they forget to push the pause button, and they just react to this fight, flight, or freeze. And it's almost like this notion of, like, you get a flat tire, and like you're sitting in the car going, damn, you believe we got a flat tire? We got a flat tire. It's like, wait a second. You got a spare in the back. Get out and change it, and let's go. And I can tell you how many stories that I've had with what I've learned from these elite pitchers, these Hall of Famers, and these Cy Young Award winners, is that they know where that pause button is. And we've actually joked around and actually made a physical pause button to kind of like, give people that feeling of, when you feel this, and you could, we suggest to some of our corporate clients, get a pause button on your desk. So when you start really getting this feel of, like, I got this big presentation, you start getting nervous. Wait, push the pause button and say, wait a second, what's my opportunity here? And one of my favorite stories, if I may, is when I was with the A's, Jason Isringhausen, Izzy was his nickname, our all-star closer.
And a highly touted Met pitcher at the beginning, and then comes around. And he I think cracked a little bit when he was here. Goes to Oakland,
right,
and really finds his stride.
Well,
how'd that happen?
When Billy Beane made the trade, he said he's our closer. I said, Billy, wait a second, he doesn't have a save yet. He goes, no, well, you guys will figure it out. You know, he's got the stuff to close, and so it was all about, okay, let's assess his delivery, look at his pitches, his grips, his game plan, the mental part of the game, and Izzy definitely had the stuff to close, and sure enough, over 300 saves later. But so here we are in 2001. We come into Yankee Stadium for a big series against the Yankees.
That's the playoffs or
during the season.
During the season. But 2001 we faced you guys in the playoffs.
In the playoffs,
too, right? Yankees.
Right.
Remember that was a 5-game series, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I want to bring that up.
Well, I am because it's part of the story. So anyway, we come into Yankee Stadium with a 1-run lead. We bring in Izzy to close the game out. Bernie Williams, leadoff hitter, first pitch, home run, tie game. Next batter, David Justice, first pitch, home run. We lost. It took about 45 seconds. Izzy was devastated. I'm telling you, it was like he was struck by lightning, literally. So after the game, I walked through the locker room, and I wanted to kind of see how's he doing, right? And as I walk by, he's still talking to the reporters, and I hear him say, "Hey, at least I'll be fine for tomorrow. I only threw 2 pitches." I'm like going, he's fine, right? So we come in the next day, and so he comes up to me, said, "Hey," he goes, "Rick, I got to talk to you." I said, yeah, what's up? He goes, no, I got to talk to you. I said, yeah, no, that's cool. So we went in the back room, and he goes, "Hey, listen, I can't go back out there right now. I can't do this tonight." I said, "I need a few days." I said, "Izzy, we all have setbacks." I said, "This isn't your first." I said, "But your opportunity for a setback now is to prepare to come back." I said, "We're in a pennant race. We can't send you to the Bahamas for 2 weeks to go windsurfing." I said, "We need you here." So a few days later, we have a nice win. And he comes up to me after the game, and he comes up to me and said, "Hey, listen, I'm the closer on this team. That's my job. I want my job back." I said, "Hey, good to see you again. Welcome back, man." So we put him in. He closes out the rest of the games. Now, fast forward, we go into Yankee Stadium for postseason. You talk about crunch time. There's no place like the Big Apple in Yankee Stadium in the postseason.
That place was rocking. I was at all 3 of those games.
And you know that.
Game 5 especially.
Right.
You can cut the air with a knife. Although Jason Giambi was pretty loose. We had a good relationship with him, and he seemed...
Awesome.
He was awesome.
So here's the story of Game 2. So we get a win in Game 1 in Yankee Stadium.
That's the flip series, by the way.
Well, don't
for all
bring
those
it
Yankee
up.
fans out there.
Right, that only cost us about $100,000.
Well, when you're coaching
money.
it, right?
Yeah,
bonus money, right?
Right. So anyway, Game 2, we have a 2-run lead. We bring in Izzy to close it out. Well, he's got to go through Bernie and David Justice again, right? First pitch to Bernie Williams, double, which is a nice improvement from last time. He walks Tino. First and second, nobody out with a 2-run lead. Giambi runs over to talk to Izzy. So I'm looking from the dugout, and I said, "Geez," I said, Art, let me go to the mound. He goes, yeah, go ahead. So as everybody jokes about, if you Wikipedia me, I always would put my hand on the pitcher's shoulder, right? So I get it out to the mound, I put my hand on Izzy's shoulder. He's literally, Brandon, like this. He's quivering. I said, "Izzy, are you okay?" He said, "Rick, I can't feel my legs." I said, "Yeah, but the good news is we don't need your legs to kick a field goal. We need your arm to make a pitch."
So a lot of times when you're going out there, it is about being funny and getting these guys to relax.
If they're in that state, and who would have thought in front of 50,000 people, here's a guy that can't feel his legs, and you're having a private, this is what the book is really about. You're having a private conversation to get this guy. We pushed the pause button. I said, "Izzy, you're a professional glove hitter. Hit the glove. Simply hit the glove." And that was the reframe, literally. Hit the glove, Izzy. You can do this. Well, he strikes out Posada. He pops up David Justice, and he pops up Brocious to close the game out. And it was like a total vindication of Izzy. He regained his all-star.
You're gonna have a great lack of memory ability, but it's like you just gotta always move on. And
exactly.
But the thing that's interesting is when we talk about crunch time, and that is now with these limited, because if I'm just summing here for a minute. If the pause button is really that important, especially with pitches being somewhat fragile, is now this limited amount of trips to the mound. How profound and how important is that going to be? I guess you wouldn't be a fan of that.
Well, I'm a fan of speeding up the game without question.
Yes.
And I was always I actually would get memos from the commissioner's office for making too many trips to the mound. But we had young pitchers, and A.J. Hinch at the time was a rookie catcher for us in Oakland. I mean, so we had young pitchers and young catchers, and Billy Bean's counting on us. Hey, we're going to the playoffs here, and so I want to make sure that with all the money on the table, we're making the right decision right here. I mean, we know what the GPS
So
is.
a little disadvantage then, frankly. It can be when you have a young pitching staff or in some of these really intense situations. Maybe there's some other ways to speed the game up. I think there's a lot more people against this part of it than anything else. Maybe this pushes the batters to stay in the box and some other stuff, because I think catchers and coaches want to get out to the mound.
Without question, but
we'll see.
That's not the problem with why the games are slow. I mean, it's kind of like, all right, let's do something to say that we did something, but that's not that. In my opinion, that's not even close to the solution. You know, the pitch clock is really. I've seen it in the minor leagues for the last few years.
Like it?
I love it. You know what? It's insignificant. It's there because they implemented it, but everybody, once you understand the pace of this game, it's insignificant. The first year they put it in AA and AAA, I think we had one violation where the umpire called either a ball or a strike. One, for the first time it was ever put in. So that's the adjustment curve.
Rick, I got to ask you, I mean, miss the coaching? I mean, you got the book. I know you're out around speaking, and you're very dynamic and getting into corporate boardrooms, but do you miss the backyard? I mean, do you miss getting on the field a little bit?
I don't. I really don't. I really enjoyed this new chapter in my life, because I'm still coaching. But what I realized early in my life when I decided I was going to start to coach, that the quality of a person's life is to truly make a difference in someone else's in a quality way. And I realized that I have had the gift, because I have my degree in sports psychology, performance-related behavior, that to make a difference with more people is even greater. On a big league staff, it's 12 guys, or cycle more pitchers come in, but you're limited to how many people you can reach.
Yeah.
But when you get on stage and you do some of these events with over 1,000 people, and people come back afterwards and said like, wow, I've really struggled to deal with pressure. I have a strategy now, and now that I've read your book, because what this book is really, it's a handbook. It's a handbook that gives you 6 different strategies of how of different situations that you can reframe pressure, and how elite athletes and elite business people have used these strategies to be successful.
So you're using some real examples and the how-to, because a lot of books tell you what to, but not how to.
This is a how-to.
It's a how-to. I don't mean to jump around, but what's Billy Bean like? I mean, what's up with him? I mean, you see that movie and he makes him into this incredible genius, but what was it like working with him? How intense? How out of the box was he?
Well, early on, he was really intense. I mean, he's calmed down now, literally, but Billy is a visionary, and so also when you think about reframing pressure, we had to reframe pressure. And that really, this is some of the roots of this book, because here we are, we won 102 games. Jason Giambi, MVP, he goes to the Yankees. Johnny Damon, all-star center fielder, he goes to Red Sox.
Yeah, a lot of talent.
Yeah, Jason Isringhausen, all-star closer. They all left, and we had no money. We had no money to replace them. So when you look at what we replaced all 3 of those guys with, we did it with no money.
Now, Billy wrote the foreword to this book, so obviously he was on your page about your philosophy, and you were an important part of it, because you're talking about developing young players as quick as possible, I would imagine.
Right. Well, it was not only that, but we started collecting data. We started looking at predictive analysis back then. And from a pitching standpoint, 2 things. One, the platform was biomechanics from Dr. Andrews' ASMI lab, American Sports Medicine Institute lab. And I'll get into that in a second. So that was the platform. So we were taking our pitchers to the lab to get an analysis. Our healthy pitchers, like Zito and Hudson in particular. I mean, Zito went to the lab after he won his Cy Young Award, to make sure that he's still going in the right direction.
But what happened to Zito? Like, all of a sudden, he just drops off, and was it something mentally with him, or he just run out of gas?
No, I think it was a combination of the fact that there was a combination. I think when he signed a big contract, I got to tell you, when people look at themselves and what he's an incredibly sensitive individual, and that was the biggest pitching contract in the history of the game.
It was huge
at the time, and he looked at himself as the same, but everybody else looked at him differently, and he really struggled with the way people looked at him, because it was all about how much money he had, and it wasn't about the person who he was. And then, a couple things, came up, and he started struggling a little bit, and, he came up with a cutter. And, in my conversations with him, that was not a productive pitch for him. And it's a good example. His fastball was 88, 89, and it had late cut. It was very similar to Mariano Rivera's, similar in the fact that his fastball cut.
Yes.
Everybody talks about Mariano Rivera had a great cutter. He didn't have a cutter.
He was a fastball that cut. He couldn't throw a fastball, Mariano, but his fastball was kind of a fastball that cut.
Right.
Late.
And then what happened was that became vogue, and everybody goes, wow, Mariano Rivera. So now these guys that are throwing 92, 93 are coming up with cutters, but these cutters are 86, 87. That's not a cutter. That's a slider. That's a slider with no depth. So you took a cut fastball, and you took a slider and took the depth away from the slider and took the velocity away from the fastball and crunched it into one pitch. So if your fastball cuts, that would, like if Mariano Rivera came up with a true cutter, that would have taken away from his cut fastball.
He didn't even know what the hell he had.
Right, exactly.
He'd be the first to admit it. He was just trying to throw a fastball, and all of a sudden things started cutting.
Right.
And he just said, let me just go with it because I can't fix it.
Right, and Zito's fastball was similar. It was a late cut, and we didn't try to change it. We didn't try to tail it. We didn't try to sink it. It's like, this is what you have. This is unique. Not many people have this. But then when he went to San Francisco, he came up with a cutter, and he added. Then it was like 83, 84. So historically, when you develop pitching, if you start throwing a cutter as a young pitcher, and you overuse it, you lose your fastball. That's what happened to Jim Abbott when Jimmy left New York and came to the White Sox. In fact, Scott Boras called me when he came to the White Sox. He said he's coming. Jim Abbott's coming, and actually there's a story in here about Jimmy Abbott.
Really? We're going to see Jim next month. He's going to be up here.
Oh,
Looking
that's
forward
awesome.
to, yeah, it's
Wow.
a great story also.
Oh, wait till you hear.
Can you imagine
the
a
story.
guy with one hand hits a home run in a major league game, not to mention a no-hitter, and wins an Olympic gold?
And he never played a game in the minor leagues.
It's unbelievable.
But the fact that he never played a game in the minor leagues is even more
insane.
unbelievable. Right.
He's had a gifted talent, and it just shows you if you want to do anything, there's a lot of things that you really, if you put your mind, you can do it.
Right. And he's just such a wonderful guy. We became really, really close.
I'm a big fan of his, and my first collectible for my son, literally when he was born, and obviously I'm in this business, and I want to get my kid this, I want to get him that, was a ball that said, to Crosby, you could do anything, Jim Abbott. And every time my kid would come and start giving me some kind of excuse, I go, you may want to go look at that ball on your desk.
Of course.
Because the guy hit a home run with one hand.
Right.
And threw a no-hitter. And you want to keep the down. All right, I heard it. I'll go back. I got it. But tell me about the Mets. The Mets situation, it seemed like you started getting a little more popularity because you came here with a little hype when you came to New York.
Way too much hype. No coach should have ever got the hype that I got.
You got a lot of hype.
Way too much. It was way too much, and I was so uncomfortable with it because in Oakland, as great as what we did in Oakland, in fact, I left Oakland to come to New York because I was going through a nasty divorce, and I have 3 children, 3 boys, and I wasn't with my kids. And I had signed a 4-year contract to stay in Oakland, and we were going to try to move to California. And after my first year, I said to Billy, I'm like dying off the field. I'm not seeing my kids. And I said, I got to get to the East Coast because my kids were old enough playing on all travel teams that they're not coming out there anymore.
And he helped you out and got you out of the contract?
Yeah, he said, I'll call New York. I'll call the Mets for you. And he said, I know the Mets are definitely interested. So actually, within 60 seconds of my interview with Fred Wilpon and Jeff Wilpon with Jim Duquette there, Fred asked me, he said, all right, so you guys have been in the playoffs 4 consecutive years. Got arguably one of the best pitching staffs in all of baseball. You've developed pitching. Why you want to come to New York? I said, Fred, there's only 3 reasons. Sean, Derek, and Dylan. I said, I got to get to the East Coast to be with my children. And so that's really how I came to New York. And then it's funny that you say that. And then all this hype, I think because of Moneyball, and in biomechanics, and I actually co-directed the sports psychology program with the White Sox for 5 years. I mean, so I was doing things like...
How hard was it to manage those kids, with knowing what you know, and did they all want to play baseball? Were you able to teach them? Were you able to coach them?
My kids? Yeah, they spent what was nice is Oakland and New York initially when I got to New York was very kid-friendly ballpark. So they were all welcome in the clubhouse. They were all welcome in the outfield, shagging during batting practice. So they grew up around Frank Thomas and Jason Giambi as kids. They grew up like I did.
You did, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't know Frank Thomas was the big hurt. It's like, my middle one in our apartment in Chicago, my oldest one, egged him on to start throwing a baseball, which was one of the rules. No baseballs in the apartment, and he breaks a window on the 30th floor, right? So we come back from the road trip, and I asked Frank Thomas. I said, Frank, do me a favor, please. We called Derek over and like sit him on your knee and ask him like, what's the deal about throwing baseballs in the apartment, you know? And here's Derek, sitting on his lap, and Frank's like, so you threw the baseball through the window? Derek's like, yeah, Frank, I'm not gonna do it anymore. So my kids had that privilege of being in that environment.
And they love the game.
And they love the game, and they knew enough about what I was doing, and they followed it enough, and they knew that But to get back to the New York situation, so after I'm getting all this in the off season, I'm getting all this like
a lot of pressure.
But I didn't feel the pressure, none in the least. I don't know because
there's a lot of expectations. It seemed like that you were going to come in and straighten everything out on the pitching.
Well, there was, but I knew that it's the process. We're going to be able to help a whole bunch of guys, and there's going to be some guys who won't be able to help. It's just part of the nature. I mean, some guys can coachable, some guys aren't. But after getting all this attention. And Jay Horowitz called me like, yeah, can you do this interview? Can you do that? And I'm like, oh, wow. It's like, this is like crazy, right? So finally, like we're about 2 weeks before spring training, so I called Jim Duquette, and Jim and I got really close at the time. And all the hype is about, the Mets brought this new coach in. And so I called Jim. I said, Jim, let me ask you a question. I said, we're going to stink this year, aren't we? And he started laughing. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, nobody's talking about the players. I'm not playing. Why aren't they talking about the players? If your biggest thing that you did in the offseason is bring a coach, we need better players, right?
What did he say?
He started laughing. He said, we're going to get there for sure. But he said, yeah, this year may be a little bit of a struggle.
Well, you wonder if the Mets are ever just going to get there. But by the way, when you talk, is there a specific group of that you love? Is there a niche group of business people you like talking to, or is it pretty widespread?
It's pretty widespread. I mean, I've spoken at the Wharton School of Business. I've spoken at the Mohegan Sun in front of 1,500 people. I've spoken at small luncheons. Really, any event where really the business people want to know, like, okay, what is the strategy? How do we all have pressure in our life? How do we deal with this fear, worry, and doubt? How do we push the pause button and seek the opportunities? And how do we get everybody involved? You getting back to what you asked about Billy Bean. We realized, even though that we were like really handicapped with our payroll, it didn't make a difference. Like we had the confidence. We had the confidence that we can make a difference in these players, and we could do it in a much different way. I mean, Moneyball reframed the entire baseball business, and not only baseball business, it reframed a lot of other business. The Wharton School of Business has a class called Wharton Moneyball.
Go young, develop talent, and right.
Right, and we started looking at we were the first to really look at ground ball, fly ball ratios and swing and miss percentages.
Good outs.
Yeah, good outs.
We never heard of a good out. Like, right. Yeah, but you hit the ball hard. You just happen to have somebody there. That was a good out, as opposed to a little dribbler at first base.
Right. And not to mention the use of biomechanics to keep our healthy pitchers healthy. Yeah. And I didn't realize this at the time, but in looking back on it, after some of these sabermetric experts came back, they came back, and I didn't realize, but those years with Oakland, we were one of the healthiest pitching staffs. We had less time on the DL. We were at the very top of the chain in all of Major League Baseball because we couldn't replace them. We didn't have the inventory, that everybody else
amazing. That's an amazing run. Ben, any questions there? Usually we get a lot of questions. We got a lot of questions. So let's rifle through some questions for Rick.
First one.
By the way, the book, Crunch Time, definitely worth picking up. By the way, can you reach out? Are you like a social media guy? Or
Yep.
So you answering that separate thing?
Yep, absolutely.
Where's the best place to go get you? Like Facebook or?
Facebook, LinkedIn, and also Twitter.
So you respond. You're on it.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
You rolling with the change.
I'm not as dumb as I look.
No, you're smart. You're smarter than you look, though, Ben. That's what it's about. They never see you coming. That's a good thing. All right, Ben, go ahead, shoot away.
This is from Christopher. What do you think's the cause of the Mets pitching woes the last couple of years between their injuries and just overall performance with all the hype that they've had?
I think one of the biggest things, and I think that's a great question, because of the fact that when you hear all the hype about these young Met pitchers when they came to the big leagues, what you heard was stuff. Look how hard they throw. Look how hard you know what? There's nobody in the big leagues that can throw the ball waist high through the middle of the strike zone and get people out. Nobody throws hard enough. If you throw 100, Chapman throws 100, they can swing 101. If he keeps making mistakes out over the middle of the plate, he gets
Location, or change of speed.
The combination, location with change of speeds. And I think what happens is you hear all this max effort, and it's like I'm gonna throw as hard as I can for as long as I can, and that's counterproductive. And I think when you listen to like Tom Seaver, who made a huge impression on me when I was with New York. I got to know Tom very well, and had the privilege to spend a lot of time with Tom.
What was his impression? What did he get? What did he
He's
get
an
through to you?
artist. Well, he's an artist. I mean, he talked about pitching as an art.
Really?
Right. And you don't hear the Met pitchers talk about the art of pitching. They talk about the pure, like just raw velocity stuff. That's not what it's about. They're professional glove hitters. As I go back to the Izzy story, you get paid to hit the glove. And I think what happens is when you start looking at some of the spin rates and you look at perceived velocity, and I'm not going to get heavy duty.
Back in the year they went to the World Series, the year before, there was so much talk about the amount of pitches,
right,
over 90 miles an hour.
Right.
That they led the league in the number of pitches that were pitched 90 miles an hour and over. And when I first heard that, I was very impressed. Like, wow, they're throwing heat.
Right.
And then I was like, man, I wonder if they're going to throw their arms out also.
Right. Well, here's one of the things. When your max effort, and again, one of the number one measurements of a biomechanical analysis that's a predictability of injury is where your arm position is at foot contact. So when your foot first touches the ground, your arm needs to. I'm left-handed. Your arm needs to be right here. Your elbow needs to be shoulder height.
During the course of a game, are you managing that and really watching that?
No, you can't.
You're watching it more in film.
You're watching it more in film.
Okay.
Because every time, so the Tommy John, the UCL injury, that's not a one-pitch injury. That's a slow wear and tear. So the best example I can use, if you drive your car and put your foot on the brake and the car pulls to the right, you can still drive your car, and your car will perform fine. You're not getting 40,000 miles out of that front tread, and you're not wearing the tread out the first time you hit the brake. It's a slow wear and tear. So every time that you're late at foot contact, your arm is down in here, your palm is facing down, it's below the elbow line, you're late at foot contact.
So they're probably late at catching a couple of the adjustments on some of those Met pitchers that they may have needed to make, maybe.
That would be from an outsider's perspective. So for example, like let's say you got a right-hand pitcher, a right-hand hitter, and he's attempting to throw a fastball down and away to this right-hand hitter for a strike, and this ball ends up and in on the other side of the plate. He was late at foot contact. If you go back and rerun that in slow motion and stop. So when I went back and looked at Harvey, you look at DeGrom back before he had his surgery. I did a segment with Al Leiter on MLB Network. Al said, can you pull up some pictures and show like what's the cause of some of these injuries? I said, yeah, we'll pull up Mark Pryor, pull up Strasburg before surgery, pull up Chris Carpenter, pull up Strasburg, pull up Pryor, pull up these guys. Well, we went into the studio. The first pitch they pulled up on every single one of these pitchers, their arms late at foot contact. It's like
that's just insane.
Right.
You would think that pitching, but I guess guys don't want to watch the film as much as they probably should. Or
well, I think what happened, Brandon, is the fact that and I'll tell this very quickly. In 1989, it was my first year with the White Sox. I'm scheduled to be the Double-A pitching coach in Birmingham, Alabama. Right before we left spring training, Larry Himes, the GM, calls me in his office and said, Rick, listen, when you get to Birmingham, Dr. Andrews has opened up the American Sports Medicine Institute, and you're going to start taking our pitchers in to get biomechanical analysis of our pitchers. So he opened up that lab. He had just done surgery on Roger Clemence's shoulder, and he wanted to see, is there something that all these guys are doing that are getting injured? Can we prevent this? So here's a world-renowned surgeon opening
one of the best.
Opening up a lab to prevent surgeries, and he makes his money doing surgeries. Like, kind of go figure that, right? It's like
you gotta respect it, though.
Yeah, and I was the first uniformed person to walk in that lab.
Wow.
And I started going through this analysis, and I got to tell you, it was a struggle because that studying biomechanics and kinesiology, that was not my strength. My mind is more into behavior science.
Yeah.
So we started getting analysis back, and Dr. Fleisig would say, all right, Rick, he's late at foot contact, his stride length is too short, the bend of the knee is too firm at foot contact, it's collapsing a ball release, and his hip rotation velocities are only 400 degrees per second. I said, what the hell does that mean? I said, I have no idea what that means. So he'd explain to me what it meant. My mind spin. I'm saying, so what do we do with this? He goes, I don't know. I'm not a pitching coach. I'm like, oh, geez, so I'm like going, all right, so, I mean, how do you do this, And because of studying the mental game early on in my life in college, I literally took a meditation class when I was 21 years old. I got into yoga.
What school? What college, by the way?
Well, I went to Gulf Coast Junior College my first 2 years. I was drafted out of high school by the Orioles, and then I graduated from Jacksonville University in Florida. But I really was into the Eastern training methods because they seem to have more answers, because I was always injured, and I was always trying to figure out how can I come back and get healthy. And I almost looked at it and said, wouldn't it be nice if you got your black belt in your pitching delivery, because you could repeat this consistently and you could really measure it that way? And so when the lab first opened, we went back to the Gibson era. We look at Gibson and Seaver and Nolan and Carlton and Sutton, I can go on, and ask the question, is there something that all these guys do that allowed them to pitch for a long time, meaning they were healthy? And is there something that they could do in their delivery to allow them to be successful? Well, the number one common thread with all those pitchers, they're all on time at foot contact.
Do you have a favorite pitcher that you feel like had the perfect form?
No, I
don't
think there is a perfect form. I think it's like in golf. I don't think there's a perfect.
But it
swing.
still comes down to
right. It's more of someone who's who's purposeful in making pitches.
Ben, a couple more.
From Eric, who's some of your favorite players you've ever coached?
Well, I've had the privilege of coaching so many. I mean, obviously, the Hall of Famers, Tom Glavine, Pedro Martinez, Trevor Hoffman, Santana, Johnny Franco, Al Leiter. I mean, I go on and on. Hudson Mulder, Zito.
What made Al Leiter so special? I see Al around here and there, and I don't know if people really give him the proper props and credit to how good a pitcher he was. Al pitched a no-hitter, won a World Series down in the Marlins, was a gamer with the Mets, and a character and a good guy, good community guy, good team guy. But what made him so special?
What made it? Well, his mind, number one. I mean, he was such a competitor. Harvey Dorfman made a huge impact on Al, who's a sports psychologist. And Al was all focused on executing pitches. His mind was in the present without question. And he was just such a great teammate. He's got an unbelievable personality. It's one of the things that we talk. One of the chapters in the book is how to utilize humor to be effective, to seek the opportunity to relieve pressure.
That's cool. Yeah, he was always a team favorite kind of guy. People liked Al.
He was one of my all-time favorites without question. And what was really cool, talking about when I first came to the Mets and how overhyped I was. So now the first team function we have before spring training, Fred Wilpon and Jeff Wilpon rented out one of the restaurants in New York, and it was just the team, right? And so we all get there, and before we sat down for dinner, everybody's having a glass of wine, a beer, whatever, and we're in a big group of guys. Glavine, Johnny's there, Piazza, Al, and Al calls me over, and it's like meeting all the guys, and so Al's like, let me tell you something. With all this hype that we're hearing about you, you better have something for us. I got to tell you that right now. Don't come in here with the same crap that everybody else does, because you better step up to the table, because you got some credit.
I love it. By the way, good relationship with Piazza?
Great. Oh, my God.
Another gamer, very intense character. I'm not sure he even gets the full props. But, it's hard to be a great catcher. And we've only seen a couple do the kind of things he's done, number-wise, hitting-wise. Your take on him?
But just an unbelievable, holistic person. He was as much as he revered the game and revered the privilege that he had to play the game and revered how well he played. I remember asking him, like, what's your highlight in your career? He said, meeting the Pope, without question. And he would in the middle of a game, literally. I remember one day Pedro was actually pitching, right, and I think Mike was hitting third that inning. We came in off the field, so I'm sitting at the end of the bench, and Mike's down by the bat rack getting his bat and his helmet ready. He goes, Rick. He goes, hey, come here. I'm like, yeah, okay. As I come down, I'm thinking, like, what's up? He said, do you know what the medicinal properties are of what did he call it? The portobello mushroom. I'm like, pardon me? and I'll tell you what, it's a damn shame we didn't have it on videotape. There was a back room where I had a table and there was a couch back there. Mike had his guitar and his drums back there. It was kind of like behind the scenes lounge, but it was where I had all my videotape and I had a table back there.
So that's where people kind of hung a little bit.
Away from everybody. Like reporters weren't allowed back there.
Because that lounge in the old Shea Stadium, it was you were right there, and there was not much. There was nowhere to hide.
No, this was a back room.
Yeah,
this was a back room, and Mike's locker was close to that room. So I spent a bulk of my time back there studying, going over game planning, and then our pitcher catcher meeting for the starter we'd always have back there, and so. To listen to Al and Mike and myself, to listen to Al and Mike go through like the game plan. So Al would do all his homework. He looks at all the videotape and he's got the lineup and he's got like about 3 or 4 lines on each guy, making notes on how he's going to pitch him. And so, and Al's like 15 espressos in him, right? And Mike's like, dude, come on, relax, and Mike's got his guitar on his lap, right? And he's kind of like, he's kind of stringing a little bit, but not really. And then he stopped, and he's just holding the guitar. And I was like, we could throw the cutter, we get the cutter in on him, they backdoor to Curbo, backdoor to, so he's going through the whole thing, right? And so after Al goes to the lineup, so Al was famous for being slow to home plate, right? And so Mike goes. He goes, Al, can you like mix in a slide step once in a while, man, to give me a chance to like throw somebody out once in a while? And I was like, dude, why don't you hit like a couple like 3-run homers like when I pitch like you do for everybody else? We don't have to worry about holding these runners on.
Exactly.
And now
exactly.
And Mike would look at me and roll his eyes going, dude, he goes, what's the matter with this guy, man?
Because we didn't really get to see a lot of Mike, more in a relax. Although now he's, you see him around a little bit. I had him do a Q&A with him a couple months back, and I was just floored by, first he's very generous and spiritual,
right,
and kind of grounded, not easygoing. But I guess in game mode, he just has this warlike, competitive attitude that you really didn't know how to take.
Yeah.
Then when you see, but you didn't get to see him that much as a normal, regular, everyday guy. Some other questions.
Yeah, got another one here. Who do you admire most in the game today? What pitchers?
Oh, many of them. Obviously, the great ones. Scherzer. When you look at what Verlander did last year, going over to Houston. That's just remarkable.
Confident. Talk about confidence.
Oh, you just talk about like he took them from a playoff contender to a World Series champs. Literally, he totally changed.
He should get a couple extra diamonds in that ring.
Yeah,
no
question. Without question about it. And I think when you look, I think the starting pitcher probably is the most dominating person in all of team sports, without question. And when you get a starting pitcher that is at the very top of his game, everybody else is humbled by it, and everybody knows it. And everybody, I don't care how great a hitter you are, the hitter knows, like, what, this is going to be a very humbling experience.
Best pitcher performance you've ever seen?
God, I've seen.
You've seen. In the dugout, you're like, wow.
I've seen so many. It's
got to be Pedro for me. I just seen. I used to sit right over the Yankee dugout, and I've seen some performances like I'm like, I don't even think they even trying to hit him anymore. They've just completely given up.
Well, when Pedro was at the top of his game,
top of his game.
It was like there was no other guy like that. But when Pedro came to New York, what I thought was really fascinating, the first game he pitched, opening day in Cincinnati in a day game, he topped out at 88, 89 miles an hour. He went through 10 hitters, a span of 10 consecutive hitters. Nobody put the ball in play.
Change of speed, movement on the ball, amazing.
Right.
He was an artist.
He struck out 9 out of 10 and walked one guy on a 3-2 pitch.
He was an artist.
There's
no question.
I analogize Pedro like Muhammad Ali was in his career. Muhammad was like so dominant early in his career, and then later in his career, he would rope a dope. I don't
think he gets the props and love either, by the way. It's not like a walking nothing, but I look at him as, I've seen Seaver. I saw Seaver pitch. I've seen Koufax pitch. I'm not an expert, but I've just never seen the consistency for over a bunch of years that Pedro brought, and also just doing what he wanted whenever he wanted. No matter whether there were men on base, it doesn't even matter. Right. Like you could just see. Like I remember the Red Sox player talking about that in the clubhouse. He would say, "Who do you want me to hit?" And then when they couldn't decide, he goes, "I'll just hit both of them." And he started hitting off hitting 2 guys. and didn't even faze him.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Talk about another crazy story.
By the way, if you got a favorite pitcher out there, I want to hear from you because we'll give out some signed balls after the interview's over. So tell me who your favorite pitcher is, most dominant, why, and I want to hear from you. Who would be the pitcher you would take as your number one pick if you were able to take one pitcher since the beginning of time? Who would you take?
Ooh, what a great
And by the way, who would be that number one pitcher you would take since the beginning of time? Give me a couple of pitches you'd say I gotta have.
Well, you gotta have Koufax. I mean, Koufax.
Yeah, you gotta have the lefty. Okay.
Right. I gotta have Gibson that year. That I'm talking about a 1.1.
But do you take Gibson over Clemens though, or over Nolan Ryan?
Well, it's a different era. I mean, so I really don't think
Nolan Ryan was scary.
He was, but he didn't. He when you look at his performance records, they weren't anywhere close to what they weren't anywhere close.
Even
to what,
CeCe in his prime.
Even CeCe in his prime. Yeah.
Woo!
And I'll tell you what, you go back and look at the first few years of Mulder, Hudson, Zito together as a group. That group of their first 50 decisions, if I'm not mistaken, and their first 100 decisions, they were in the top 5, I think, in the history of the game. I mean, which is amazing.
Yeah.
All 3 of those kids coming at the same time.
I think Bobby was talking about Fergie Jenkins. Can't discount him.
No, but I mean, Fergie was a great pitcher, but Fergie didn't dominate like.
No.
You know, I mean, you just like he was a painless like he killed you, like he slit your wrist and have a bottle of wine in the tub, right? Like he was painless, you know. Whereas Pedro, like you felt the pain when you faced Pedro.
You felt the pain, like you like just hoping maybe you can get to the 8th inning, maybe you can get a couple of hits, and the other pitcher would hold you because you knew you weren't getting much. Maybe a run, maybe 2, maybe.
No, exactly.
If you made a mistake. And
Clemens, I was in Toronto. I got to know Roger very well when I was in Toronto. It was his first year that he left. I was the minor league pitching coordinator when he came to Toronto, when he first left Boston, and I spent a lot of time with him in spring training, and I was like, I mean, just totally amazed. I mean, talk about work ethic.
Artist.
An artist.
And
just
power.
And just just a gamer and the way he did everything. I mean, like, one of the more difficult things for a minor league coach is to do pitcher's fielding practice in spring training when the team's on the road, because everybody wants to get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody's got a tea time or whatever they're doing. And I was adamant about the fact that, okay, and I'm sure Bobby would share this as well, all right, these are the 2 plays we're going to work on today, like covering first base and maybe the first and second bunt play. And I went to Roger the first time because I had that responsibility that whole spring training. So I got Pat Henkin coming off of Cy Young. I got Roger Clements. And so I went to Roger and I said, Roger, listen, we have a half hour of this pitcher's fielding practice on the back field before everybody's out of here. We will do this right. We're going to do this perfect. I mean, to be great, it's doing all the simple things perfect. That's what it's about. And I need you, because if Roger Clements isn't going to do it perfect, nobody else is going to do it. He goes, Rick, because I'm all in, man. And here's a minor league coach. He just met me. Here's Roger Clements. And I'm going, and I was adamant about like every single detail. Here's how you cover first. Here you hit the inside corner of the bag. Roger, if you wanted to do an instructional video of how you take pitchers fielding practice, go film Roger Clements.
Really?
Go film Tom Glavine.
I loved your analogy about there's no discounts in being extraordinary.
Right.
No on sale, no discount break, no
coupons.
employee break. I love that. It's so true. There's no shortcuts.
There's no shortcuts.
No elevators. You got to take the stairs. One step
what
at a
do
time.
they say? They don't. No one that's great ever gets airlifted to the top of the mountain. You got to take it one step at a time to climb it.
It really is true. All right, I think we're out of time. Ben, one more?
Let's take one last one.
One last question.
Any more inspiring stories from your time with Michael Jordan?
Not so much about Jordan, but that was really the most inspiring.
What kind of effect did he have on the team, though?
Incredible. And I say that because I think the Met fans would be interested when people go like, "What the heck is Tebow doing? Why are they giving Tebow? Why is Tebow there?
Why?
You want to show the example of what excellence is and how you prepare and how you go about your business on a daily basis to be a professional. Because one of the things that I always explain to young pitchers as a coach, not everybody here is going to be a major league pitcher. That's our dream. Everybody here can definitely be a major league person, and there's a price to pay for that. And that price is a high price to be best, like we said before. And if you become a major league person, you'll be successful in everything that you do in life. And in order to be a great major league pitcher, you have to be a great major league person first. in order to do that, in order to go down that path and that journey.
I wish you all the luck. I can't wait to come and hear you speak. I'm going to come and check you out. I've heard you're an unbelievable speaker. Crunch Time's the book. Pick it up on Amazon. Also, check him out on Facebook. I assume you don't do any more pitching clinics and pitching stuff, or every now and then you get pulled in?
I do some, yeah.
It's got to be unbelievable if you're a young pitcher and you get to spend an hour with you. It would be
some,
amazing.
Yeah, I'm starting to look into like that elite pitching,
Yeah.
Coaching. But I really enjoy the speaking and the workshops.
Yeah.
At the top.
It's special. It's important.
Right.
Crunch Time. Rick Peterson, former pitching coach.